back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on my 2007 BMW 335i. Today we're going to be lowering the BMW. We're going to be throwing some Bilstein coilovers on it. I do have aftermarket 19-inch wheels. I'm not exactly sure the specs on them because they were already on the car when I purchased it. But as for tires in the front, we are running 235 by 35 by 19s, which seems to be a little bit stretched on this rim. I believe it's a 9-inch rim. As for the rears, I believe we have a 10-inch rim and we are running 255 by 35 by 19s. So we do have a little bit more of a meteor setup in the rear, which is going to play a role in how much I'm going to lower each 4 of the corners. Here is my cheat sheet that I made for this car. This is going to be different if you have different wheel and tire setups, but on the stock here, we got 24.25 inches. That is measuring from the bottom of the rim right here, not the tire, because the tire will compress depending on the PSIs and it's not as accurate. So we are measuring from the bottom of the rim right there up to the bottom of the fender right there. And so these are the numbers that I got. As you can see on the left side of the car here, it is about a 1/4 inch higher. That is because you got to accommodate for the weight of the driver. Now, as for the coilovers, I believe I'm going to go about 1.25 inches in the front. I'm going to try to keep the same stock setup here with it being a 1/4 inch higher on the left here. On the rear left, we're going to drop it about 1 inch. And these numbers are not exact. I tried to measure them to the nearest 1/4 inch, but they are very close. So that is my goal for this. I'm going to try to raise it about 1.25 inches and then 1 inch in the rear. Now I'm going to show you guys actually why BMW made it a 1/4 inch higher on the left side. That is to accommodate for the weight of the driver. Now I am about 205, 210 pounds. Here is the coilovers we're going to be installing today. I did get these used on eBay for about 350 bucks, which is a smoking deal compared to what these are costing brand new. I did test to see if they're in good shape. These shocks are difficult to compress and they rebound fast, so they are in good shape. And as for what these coilovers are, they're essentially a street coilover or an upgrade over OEM. The spring rate isn't super soft like a race coilover, which is good because I am running a front lip and I don't want to scrape that. Also, the shocks are not super stiff like a race coilover. That way, if you do go over bumps, it's not super rough. I did get some OEM top hats right here. They smell like brand new tires. They're just rubber on the inside. I've heard stories of people replacing these on stock suspension and it actually raises the car about 1 inch. So I figured I went ahead and get these. That way, if these do settle, I can adjust them. Also, it just refreshes the suspension. I got the rear shock mounts right here as well. Now to get the top hat on these coilovers and transfer over some other things, I'm going to have to disassemble the OEM spring. So I got a spring compressor set right here. I probably won't need to use that on these because they are set on the lowest setting. I could probably just attach this nut onto there without compressing the spring. As for the handling on the stock suspension, it felt really good before I tuned the vehicle, but as soon as I tuned it and added that extra power, I felt like whenever I was able to go faster around corners, it felt a little bit squirrely. I think with the new shock mounts and the coilovers, it's really going to transform the handling on this car. I also got a strut bar for the front. I'll show you guys that once I get to that. But let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and pull the car in the garage, get it jacked up. Right here, there is a rubber bushing, and there's also one right here that kind of looks kind of weird right now, which I'm not too happy about that, but because there's tension obviously put on it. I did put a jack stand underneath here, but I can't go too high because the shock will actually hit the fender. But now I need to actually spread this knuckle right here to remove the shock because it is essentially a press fit. So there's a lot of different tools, but this is the one I had on hand. For this hole right here, they come with these different sized little things that are supposed to go in here. You can also tighten them up on either side. And then on the back side of these right here, these are actually Allens, and that's what keeps this entire thing together. We go ahead and tighten those because we're gonna need this exact same setup for the other side. And once you get it to that point, you can go ahead and tighten this and it should spread this. So now I can kind of show you everything that I had to disconnect. As you can see, I disconnected this factory sway bar. All you have to do, it's actually just a little swivel over here. So you can swivel it back and forth a little ways. So just move it out of the way so you can get that bolt. I was hoping to use a spring compressor to compress the spring and pull it out this way, but it wasn't working. Part of the tool was actually hitting the perch right here, or the spring bucket, whatever you want to call it. So I couldn't use that. So I went ahead and just bit the bullet and unloosened these. I'll have to retighten them whenever I get the suspension preloaded because they are rubber. So you want to preload the suspension, use a jack this up as high as it will go until it starts lifting up off the jack there, and then go ahead and tighten those down. This tool worked out really well. I know there's a better tool out there, but this one is pretty dang good. Other things need to disconnect. The sway bar right here, there is a bracket. I'm doing the left side here. You're gonna have this headlight leveling sensor. So you wanna disconnect that. It's just a little clip. It'll go on this control arm. You don't wanna break it. And then just these lines and stuff are kind of clipped into the shock. There's two of them. Here is the new to me strut already lined up with the old one. As you can see, it's pretty similar. The lengths of them are exactly the same. As for right here, it's literally looks identical. The only difference I could tell is when you count the coils, and by that I mean starting from where this starts and going around once. I'll count that as 1. This one has 4 and this one has 5. Also, the spring right here looks to be a little bit thicker than the OEM one. I can still kind of compress it a little bit, but not as easy as this one. This one's pretty dang soft. So we probably won't have as much spring travel as we would if we used the stock one. All right guys, I would say our shocks are a little bit worn out. So watch this, one finger. This is how hard it is to press in the new ones. See, they come straight back up. So I actually made a crucial mistake here. There's actually a washer that goes underneath this new strut mount. I'll show you what I mean in a second. So I actually found this. I was looking up the torque specs on these. And as you can see down here, let me make sure we get all that grease back in there. There's actually a washer that goes underneath here. I'm gonna throw a little bit of extra grease in there because some did come out. I assumed our new one had this, but it did not. Make sure you got the washer that sits on top in the right spot. And we'll try this again. This nut gets torqued to 47 foot-pounds, but I can't really do it right now because it just wants to spin and I can't really hold this, but I'm gonna go ahead and put this on and then try to tighten it. So I went ahead and got this side all finished up. Got the wheel back on. It's not torqued yet because I'll probably need to do some adjustments. This side, I just got finished. Got the Bilstein in there, everything connected, everything torqued down to spec. On this side, I just loosened that bolt right there, and that was enough to kind of take this, the original strut out. As for this gap right here, I actually measured it. I actually raised it to about 3/4 of an inch on both sides. That's from the top of this collar, or from the bottom of this collar right here, where these two collars meet in the middle of that, to right here. Measured that to 3/4 on both sides. The reason I did that is because I was doing some research on these. If you raise it to the maximum setting here, as you can see the threads go a little bit higher, it will actually be lower than the OEM struts. So I'm gonna leave it at this. I think it's gonna lower it, you know, a decent amount. And that kind of gives me some room to play. It's not going to be where I want it, so I'll probably have to do some adjustments. But as for that, we can go ahead and throw the wheel on here. And once we get that done, I'm going to go ahead and jump on the rears and try to knock those out. All right guys, sorry for the lack of video. I've been trying to work on this thing. It's just been a pain in the ass to put back together. I'm also kind of learning how to do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys. So this is what it all looks like put back together. I went ahead and loosened these two bolts right here, and they're basically just loosened that one. On these two bolts right here, they are adjustable. You don't have to do the upper one, but the lower one you do need to loosen. So just to make sure I get it back in the same exact spot, I marked a line right there. It's already torqued down to 121 foot-pounds, as well as this one. This one you have to fully remove to drop down this lower arm and to get that spring out. As you guys seen, our shock mount was pretty much busted there. It's still pretty solid, but it is busted. And obviously this thing, it's kind of hard to show with one hand, but it is all the way down. It just moves just like the front, so those definitely need to be replaced. As for the adjustment right here, I did make it 1 inch. I'm gonna see what that looks like. I think it'll be pretty accurate. Obviously got our new strut end and our new mount down there. Everything's pretty solid. I'm gonna go ahead and put the wheel on that side. And for the interior, you pretty much have to strip the entire inside of your trunk to get to the strut right there. There is one bolt, and I believe you can use it with a 7 or an 8 millimeter to hold the top. See, this is just completely destroyed. This is supposed to be up here. And also these little shock, I guess you'd call them mounts, they are metal. They get kind of stuck up in there. I was trying to put the spring in there and I realized these actually need to pop out. This is what they look like. They also have this little rubber bushing in them, but this will come out with the spring, and it basically just sits in there like this and up into there. And all you need to do to remove this is just hit it with a mallet or pry it with a screwdriver and it will come out. You guys saw my tires are pretty much toasted on the back. I feel like the camber adjustment was off because I'm getting a lot of wear on the inside of the tires. I know there's supposed to be a little bit of camber, but the outside of the tires really aren't terrible compared to the inside, especially on this. You can see I'm actually getting wires showing, which is crazy. And this is just getting completely chewed up in some areas. So I think I'm in need for some new tires. The 535i that I'm building, I'm still waiting on parts for that. So I might just try and steal the tires off of them and throw them on this, see what it looks like. I know they're 275s on the back. I know they're all 19s, but they're 275s on the back, and I think 245s in the front, so it'll be a little bit of an upgrade. Got the front and the rear wheels from the 535i. As you can see, the fitment in the front is actually pretty good in terms of offset. It's kind of exactly how I would want it. As for the rear, I'm just saying, if I was to use these spacers, definitely need probably like a 1 inch spacer in the rear. So as for tires, we got 245 by 40 by 19, which is huge in the front. That is a big sidewall compared to our 235 by 35 by 19s, which are basically rubber bands. I went ahead and turned it. It is very close, but it does not touch. We'll see what exactly happens whenever I lower it. I'm kind of scared of my fender right here. As for the rear, we're going from a 255 by 35 by 19 to a 275 by 35 by 19. So a little bit thicker of a sidewall, just slightly, but a lot wider of a tire. I don't think we're gonna have any issues with fitment as far as these go. Well guys, I've pretty much been working all day, but I might just cut it here for the night and I'll come back in the morning to do a little bit more adjusting. I think in the rear, it looks a little odd, but I think it needs a little bit more positive camber. I'm not sure if I'd need a bigger alignment or camber bolt. I know that they sell those. I'm sure I probably do if I want to go anything lower than 1 inch. So you can see it looks like there's a little bit of toe in as well, kind of like this, but definitely a ton of camber. Look at that. That's insane. Yeah, I don't know if I can do any more adjustment on that as a thing. As for the front, the camber, it looks okay. It looks pretty straight. I see a little bit of toe out. Yeah, that's just way too hot boy for me. I'm not trying to be like that. I like maybe like no space, but not tuck and tire. Even the fronts are a little too hot boy for me. I would like to go up maybe another quarter to half an inch. It's the next day here. I went ahead and did a full ride height adjustment off camera. I didn't have to mess too much with the front, just some minor adjustments to get the front to where it was sitting right. This coilover is actually maxed out on the front left. It is right at 23.5. I matched that with the rear. That one's at 23.5 as well. And then on the right side here, I just went ahead and went 23.25, just a little bit over 23.25 on both sides. So it's not the full quarter, but I think that will be perfect because these springs are a little bit stiffer, so they're not going to squat as much whenever I am in the driver's seat. Here's what the front looks like. So you can see a little bit of tires being covered, just barely. And then on the rear, we got just barely a little bit of tire covering. It's a thicker tire, so it's gonna cover a little bit more. It also looks like it covers more as well because, as you can see from the lighting, we actually have toe in and then a ton of camber. But it did get better once I raised it. I actually raised the rear about an inch. And here is our numbers before. We dropped just about 3/4 of an inch in the front and about a half an inch in the rear. That is clearly not what I was planning on dropping it because these aren't the wheels I was planning on running. But that's how it's gonna be for now until I get new tires. I'm gonna try to find the best spec tire. I think I'm gonna run the same 275 by 35 by 19. That just seems to fit perfectly. It's not too big and it's probably the widest tire I can fit with the rim that I have. 245 by 40 by 19s in the front here. I think that's just way too big of a tire for this. I think I'm gonna go either 255 by 35 or 245 by 35. And I think that will look a lot better. But before I go ahead and do any adjustments to the alignment, let's go ahead and take it for a quick test drive. Too bad. I was kind of worried about these wheels not being aligned, but I was going fast enough to the point where they should be wobbling if they weren't balanced. I'm kind of having to hold this tripod here because it's kind of moving around quite a bit, so I might not be able to go down the back roads and test this thing, but I'll definitely let you guys know how they feel. Right off the bat though, they definitely feel a little more stiff. They don't feel uncomfortable by any means. I've gone over a few bumps now and you definitely feel them, but they are not super harsh. This really just takes the 335i stock suspension and just kind of improves it in every single way just a tad bit more. It's also nice having shocks that actually work in your car as well. Well guys, on camera I told you that it felt a little bit stiffer. It does, but when you go over bumps it somehow feels smoother. I don't know how they did it or what, but so far I'm loving these coilovers. I would highly recommend these coilovers if you're just looking for a slight improvement over stock.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
Guys, well I went ahead and went on a test drive. Thing drives amazing. It was a little weird because the alignment was off slightly. My steering wheel was a little bit more to the right than it usually is. The alignment was already off. These coilovers feel really good and smooth, especially with these Continental Sport Pluses. That's what I had on the rear on my other tires, except they were obviously bad, so it was riding a little bit rough at high speeds. And I'm kind of glad I put these coilovers on when I did because I feel like that right rear tire was about to blow pretty soon. As you saw, the wires were showing. It's pretty crazy. But this build is really coming along. In the next video, we're gonna have some power mods coming. They're going to be my top 2 power mods for the 335i, not counting a tune. So stay tuned for that. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more BMW content. Thank you guys for watching.